At this time, I have the honor to present to you the moral leader of our nation. I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But that is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. And they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our body is heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, my country tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, Let freedom ring, and if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
What's up? Let's Talk About It Podcast Mobile. Jail Tycoon. Happy Martin Luther King Day, everybody. Let's get into it. So it's Martin Luther King Day. A lot of people are celebrating down in the South, I'm pretty sure, and all over the United States, all over the world probably. The man caused a big change, did his thing. So, and we get to reap the benefits from it. Thank you. So let's get into some facts about the guy, the King, the Martin Luther King Jr. First of all, he didn't start off as Martin Luther King Jr. He started off as Michael Lewis King Jr. And how this happened was his dad ended up going to Germany. Stuff happened over there. He ended up liking somebody over there, like a leader, Martin Luther. So ended up naming Martin Luther King Jr. his name. So he had to change his name legally and then change his name legally. So they just changed their names. And that's how we got Martin Luther King. Or we would have got Michael Lewis King. Either way it go. He kept it MLK. He was born January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. Martin Luther King Jr. parents are Michael King Sr., Alberta Williams, and he has 4 children of his own. He died April 4th, 1968, Memphis, Tennessee. For the people that remember that date, it was a very sad date from what I have heard. The stories I have heard from the black community and stuff. The people that grew up in that era, it was a very sad time. Their leader had been struck down. There's a couple leaders that had got struck down around that time, though. The 60s was a lot of death in the 60s. A lot of stuff was going on. People were fighting for equality. It was just a movement trying to get some stuff done. He was a Nobel Peace Prize winner. He was married to Coretta Scott. His most famous quote was, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by their color of their skin, but the content of their character," which says a lot in today's society. But yeah, your thoughts on that? Let's Talk About It Podcast Mobile. Happy Martin Luther King Day. If you have anything on your mind you want to talk about, you can always email us at Let's Talk About It Podcast Mobile at yahoo.com. And we'll get back to you. Okay, so to elaborate on it a little bit more, it was a Protestant Reformation leader that was named Martin Luther. That's how Martin Luther King came about. Martin Luther King entered college at the age of 15. So even back then, he was smarter than a lot of people that he was growing up with and that was older than him. King was such a gifted student that he skipped grades 9 and 12 before enrolling in 1944 at Morehouse College. So now that we're back, let's talk about it. Podcast Mobile. We're going to get into the NBA right now, which is really going hard and it's all shaking up and things is crazy. So let's see what's going on today. Right now we have the Raptors playing there in the fourth quarter. They seem to be up by 1 point. They're playing the Knicks. The Pelicans are playing the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers won that game today. The final was 113 to 103. Cavaliers won. The Heat right now are playing the Hawks. They're in the fourth quarter with 6 minutes left. The Heat are down. The Hawks are up 102-94. Jazz are playing the Timberwolves in the third quarter right now. And that is 71-75. And then you have the Suns and the Grizzlies playing here in a little bit at 4 o'clock p.m. Grizzlies record is 29-13 and the Suns are 21-23. The Rockets play the Lakers at 8:30 p.m. tonight. Rockets sitting at 10-33 and the Lakers sitting at 19-24. Let's get it together, LeBron. Y'all got to win this one for the money. And that is your games for today in the NBA. We will be going over the top 5 later on. Stay with us. Let's Talk About It Podcast Mobile. Let's Talk About It Podcast Mobile, Martin Luther King Day edition. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Hope everybody enjoyed it. It was a very quick segment. Just wanted to get it out there to everybody. You know what I'm saying? Show some love. Black History Month is coming up, so I got a lot more work to put in here in a little bit. But yeah, definitely appreciate all the subscribes, people reposting, sharing. Keep sharing. Thank you. We will have some merch coming out soon. Let's Talk About It podcast, mobile shirts. Well, let's talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Shirts. We gonna get it in. Keep sending your emails. Let's Talk About It podcast mobile at yahoo.com. Appreciate all the love that I'm getting on the emails right now. Yeah, just keep supporting me, showing love, showing up, listening, watching, clicking. You know what I'm saying? We appreciate all of it over here. Eventually, you'll catch me on Spotify, iTunes, Tidal, here in a few, and we'll be in a few more places. I do have a couple more segments coming to you, live reviews, food reviews, drink reviews in certain locations, more crazy characters like Rastafari line coming. It's just been a real busy year already, starting off 2023 pretty busy. But definitely check out this episode, check out my old episodes, check out my new episodes that are coming. And if you have something you want to talk about, get off your chest, and you want me to talk about it and you don't want to talk about it, hey, I'll talk about it for you. You know, just email me. Like I said, Let's Talk About It podcast mobile at yahoo.com. Thank y'all for watching once again. Deuces.